There won't be a day goes by until my baby turns 18 and that I'm not scared of someone coming knocking on my door.
Parents can change. Everybody has capacities to change.
I went home some weeks and cried, I'll be honest.
Often there's the fear from social workers that they need to get things right.
You are like a deer in the headlights. You stood there not knowing which way to go, what to do, and you come face to face with a challenge.
A lot of the recommendations are around just seeing people as humans and giving time and respect and building relationships.
Each and every one of us have taken something away from this that will help us to change our practice and hopefully change the experiences of children and families in Blackpool in the future.
We knew that it was ambitious. We knew that we had to think very carefully about our principles and the way that we behave and act in this co-production project as people who were setting it up and facilitating it. And we also knew that it was incredibly important.
I'm proud of Blackpool for taking this road. You know, we weren't talking about co-production 5 years ago. So I kind of felt a little bit of personal pride in that the work that we've been doing within the Head Start programme was starting to ripple out across the system.
Blackpool's been on a 6-year journey. We've been testing and learning from co-productive activity. The most impactful piece of co-production that we've done has been the Blackpool Families Rock work.
That followed 3 principles: head, heart and hands, and throughout everything that we've done, we've tried to incorporate that through this project.
This is a really emotional, challenging piece of work where people's lives have been completely tipped upside down by the situation. So to just kind of waltz in there and say, "Hi guys, let's do some co-production," was going to be challenging.
I was honoured, really honoured to be part of this group and to be asked. I was very nervous to begin with. I think I spoke to the young men in the group that I was worried that I would be criticised and my service would be severely criticised and I wouldn't necessarily have all the answers.
I've had so much negative experience through my life because of the system, and if my input can help change the system for the better, even if it's not for myself, it's for someone else, that's what mattered to me.
I didn't know what to expect. It was a very different concept to what I've ever done before. I think it's been sort of really beneficial. I personally have never done any work with lived experience. You know, it's always been sort of very separate, almost that's them and us. I feel that I've had my eyes opened to what needs to be done better. It's made me frustrated that I've done the mums and the dads group and then going back to normal practice, and I felt really sort of agitated, almost cross that we're not meeting the needs.
So my expectations were obviously to, again, work with groups of people, and I understand that's what co-production is, you're working with multiple different people. Again, hoping for similarities and things, knowing I wouldn't be judged on my opinions or experiences, but again, trying to help other people. That was more my experience, like my expectation.
For me personally, was always apprehensive going into this space because we didn't know how that was going to go each week. Some weeks were really hard for all of us because we shared some really tricky experiences and were really vulnerable.
I remember we went to a local boxing gym. We turned up and a couple of professionals I don't think were aware that we were all going to be getting stuck in, and it was really, really, really powerful just to see everybody in it together. Maybe talking about some of their insecurities or the worries of sort of the co-production work that we're going to be doing. And yeah, it was just, again, really powerful moments that I think we relied on in the weeks that were to follow in the sessions.
The magic happened when we explored what Blackpool could do together. And we created a space where people could feel like equals.
The experience of people with lived experience was every bit as valid as the experience of those people with professional or work experience.
For me, something about the process is the byproduct that you get. So you get the individuals in the group having so much therapeutic value from the process, and that's not just the people with lived experience, it's everybody. It's how much better they're feeling and how they're being able to cope with some of the situations that are going on. I think is definitely one reason why you should do co-production.
Not case files or you know, nameless case studies or whatever. These are real people with insecurities and vulnerabilities.
Like the first day that we came in, a few of the girls, we was all stood together and we was like, oh my God, she's like the manager of social services and we better not say nothing. And there was that kind of us against them kind of thing. I think along the journey that we've made, we've all kind of a sympathy, I suppose, towards each other, because we're all kind of struggling and trying to figure our way through it all, aren't we? And try and put kids first and make sure that they're getting everything that they need. And I think by us all coming together, it's kind of give us an understanding that we are all wanting the same thing.
Having parents involved in this research, people who've been on the receiving end of our practice, I think it's been important for us to see that reflected back, to hear as a practitioner how that has felt.
I still hold some anger and there's always going to be that frustration, but there's definitely a different perception. You're not so hostile towards the system almost. You've worked with them for weeks, you have a better understanding of the stresses they go through and almost their regrets as well from what they want to do, what they have to do. It's not always the case of what's wanted.
The fact that we were able to broker a relationship between the system and dads to talk openly and honestly about these things. Not to say there wasn't challenges, there was, but we got to a place where we kind of agreed that things needed to change, and these were the ways that Blackpool were going to do it.
Relationships and consistency, I think, underpin any positive practice. You know, things like respect and being as honest as you can manage, and you have to be that way every time that you meet.
I'm lucky because I've got my support worker from For Baby's Sake who will be there for me. When I first started working with her, she asked me what I like doing, and she noticed that I had my rescue dogs. So for my sessions, we used to take the dogs out for a walk, which was really nice. It was just so easy to open up to her and build that relationship with her. Whereas being sat in a room with someone that I'd never met before, just come into my house and starts prodding at all these questions about my life and private things, you can't open up with someone like that.
It was very difficult, again, having so many people involved, you couldn't really focus on what you needed to do.
When For Baby's Sake came in, it was an everyday thing for the first month, which gave me the chance to build up a proper relationship with the worker. She just supported me and listened and was there from the get-go for who I was at that time, not for who I used to be. It makes it a little bit easier to form a relationship rather than having to speak to different people, continuously repeating yourself over and over again.
Including lived experience is important, as people need to value that. You can't be supported in a way that you need to be supported if no one really listens and values what you've been through. If you don't value it, you can't change anything.
Lived experience is one of the best resources you'll ever get. If people have been through something that's been difficult and challenging and hard and painful, they'll bring something good to the table.
There's still failures going on in social services that were happening when I was a child. So I think by having people who's actually lived it on all different sides, you can bring it together and make it a lot better.
The whole process is traumatising in itself. Males, when we get wound up, we puff our chest out and we're a bit more intimidating than females, and I've got disabilities which make that come out a lot more, and people take it as aggressiveness. So it's easier to label males as aggressive and dangerous, and then that just gets used as a massive thing when it's not. It's you were traumatised as a child, you've processed that, you've then been dragged back through that trauma, you've got a bit agitated with the situation and talking about it, which is normal and understandable, and that then gets used against you. People can get post-traumatic stress disorder just from getting dragged through it. Again, it can bring it all back.
They'd come to the ward in front of the other mums and discuss my past and why they was doing the things that they was doing and why we wasn't allowed to go home, and it was kind of put there for everyone to listen to, which isn't a nice place to be when you're kind of trying to enjoy being with your new baby.
And it's unfair because it's almost as if they're waiting for somebody just to come and take the baby from them.
There won't be a day goes by until my baby turns 18 and that I'm not scared of someone coming knocking on my door. Like, that fear's been in me since I was a little girl and I was taken from my family.
They were constantly worried. They were fearful of every knock on the door, normal routines within households and children that fall around and have accidents, that for them, they were really worried and feeling that they are being looked at all the time. And I think that was quite harrowing to hear that actually that's how a parent continues to feel, despite what we believe would have been a positive outcome.
I didn't want to have to keep reliving my own experiences of childhood as I've tried to learn and move past everything. You don't want to keep going back on something when you're yourself trying to step forward and get past that all mentally, physically for your own child. We have to go home from those meetings looking back on what's been explained and said. It's just distressing. There could be a different way to approach it. If you've already been a care leaver or looked after, you don't get away from it. You don't get the chance to be a normal parent without social services being involved or any other support, which is very almost discriminating in a way.
You can say that you are a trauma-informed service, but unless you offer a really authentic response to that trauma and you understand that underpinning all of the challenges, all of the difficult behaviours and the risks that you are concerned about, unless you understand that trauma is at the root of that, you aren't going to get very far.
Early intervention is vital, and I think that the time frame from initial assessment to birth is such a small window of opportunity to complete those assessments and to make sure that that social workers have had expert assessments, but also for parents to change within that time scale. And we're asking parents a lot, and so that's the dilemma, I suppose, that between support and assessment is that they need to be hand in hand.
I didn't have the consistency through my pregnancy. I didn't start having proper midwife appointments till I was about 5 months pregnant. I did occasionally have social worker appointments.
It's really important that we become involved much sooner, that we can have that opportunity to work with families at a much earlier stage and support, so that we are giving families the most opportunity to enable families to stay together. And we haven't always done that.
I feel like we're letting these families down. We're still getting women being admitted, not knowing the outcomes, not being aware that, that the local authority are looking at going for a separation. And once baby's born isn't the time that they should be telling them. We've got drifting in cases where we're putting referrals in at, a very early gestation, and we're getting to 30, 32 weeks, and we don't know what the outcome of the pre-birth assessment is, let alone the parents, and it's not right.
There should be specialist teams involved, because I understand where I went wrong with my other kids and why things happened the way they did, but there was no real explanation for any of what was happening.
A person's presentation doesn't depict who they are, but it can depict their trauma, and we need a specialist team that has that full knowledge and understanding and a real interest in pre-birth and working with families to keep families together and working with the partnership so that we can prevent children coming into care, and we need to make sure that it's a robust approach.
Pregnant women that have got that risk of the babies going into the care system at birth is a specialist role, and it is important that the midwives have the relevant training, that they understand the processes, and it needs to be separate to a generic community midwife who is caseload holding. You need the right people that want to do the job with the specialist training, and that's from a social work point of view and from a maternity point of view.
One of the basic principles, the first principle, is that everybody can change, and that's both mothers and fathers.
Initially, with the assessments that we go through, it's very difficult because it is almost a pass or a fail. They don't really give you any indication at the start as to what you can improve on, what needs to be changed. They wouldn't really tell you straight away as to how clear everything was or what you needed to do to make those changes. You're a young parent, you've never done this before, they just see the risk, they don't see how we can help you to change or adapt.
Parents can change. Everybody has capacities to change, and what can we do to enhance and support that?
People have assets as well, and they have real strengths, and to focus in on them a little bit more would be so much more helpful to the whole process, both for the people, you know, living it and the people that are working, and just to have a bit of a more asset-based and strength-based approach over these people is so important.
The assessment process should be based on respect and humanity, just understanding between each other. I was in care, so a lot of everything I did growing up, which I was a pretty troubled child, is on record, and that all gets focused on. It's the assessment to me should be, am I capable of looking after my child now? Yes, there was things in the past, and I accept I did things in the past, but all the changes that they're saying I haven't made in my life, I've made significant changes, but none of them positives were focused on. It was all the negatives that, like, from my past, all the stuff from now isn't included in the assessment.
A real change that I want to see is that parents get a very clear map. If you say to people, this is our expectation, this is the time frame, this is the map, we want you to work with this service, we want you to meet with this person because this is what we're trying to see in terms of you changing things and getting to grips with your, you know, whatever issues it is we're asking you to.
You are like a deer in the headlights. You stood there not knowing which way to go, what to do, and you come face to face with a challenge. You need to know which direction you're going to go in. You need to know how you can change and improve before any further action is taken. I mean, if you're not giving clear directions or instruction or guidance, you can't really change what needs to be changed for the better.
If there's going to be a separation between parents and baby, I think it should be well in advance to having baby and having to come home to a house full of belongings for a child that you might not be coming home with.
At very early days, there needs to be a meeting with agencies involved, currently involved, and the mum and the dad, if that's appropriate. And the family need to be asked, what do you want this to look like? How do you want this journey to happen? And who do you want to come on this journey with you?
I had moments where I was gobsmacked, things like women going into labour, not knowing what the plan was, so not actually knowing if their baby was going to go home with them. They almost took my breath away, those moments, because I hadn't considered that was anybody's reality, and there I was, you know, in a room with people, and that was their reality. So yeah, that really shocked me.
It ended up being 4 days. I was in the hospital with my baby, not knowing whether I was bringing her home or not, which was really difficult. And then you're sort of sitting in the hospital waiting for all these things to get done, and you have to wait and go at professionals' times, and you don't have anyone who understands what you're going through, and it's as horrible as it sounds, it's just a job to them. They get to go home at the end of the day, and that you're still sat there with your baby, not knowing whether your baby's going to continue to be your baby.
Fathers get a raw deal, really. That they're not always included, they're not always thought about, they're not seen as the primary carer. Fathers often become quite agitated or angry about decisions or not being included, and that is seen as another negative or black mark against them.
All the information I've received through these proceedings, I've had from my partner before my solicitors even received it. Every bit of support that was going to be put in place for this child to come home did not include me. Dads get basically looked at like they're not worth the ground they stood on or the oxygen they breathe.
Working with the dads on this is that once you actually get to know them, they're not maybe what they look like on paper. So if we've done these really thorough pre-birth assessments, we've all worked together, we'll understand that, well, actually, they're not a risk. Although there may be a bravado, that initial quite aggressive, confrontational presentation, that isn't who they are. And I think getting to know getting to know the people through this process, that's really become sort of evident.
And often, and we talk about post-separation, they're completely forgotten. And the testament from some of the young men that were involved in this group and this work was really, really powerful.
The most impactful thing was when one of the dads said that there'd been a decision that his partner and the baby were going to a mother and baby unit, and he was left to make his own way home to a flat on his own, and not one person discussed how he was feeling, what support was there for him, or what follow-up he would get. He didn't know when he was going to see his partner and his baby, and that's just, it's not right.
It's a traumatic experience to go through proceedings, whether you have a positive or negative outcome, and you don't get no support afterwards. So even if I lose my kid, I do this, I go and attempt suicide or something because of it, no one cares. There's no support for me there for my mental health or anything for afterwards, and you're just kind of left to suffer.
I would really, really welcome the post-separation guidance because, for one, we don't have such guidance in social work. Social work is very, very procedural, so we have guidance and procedures on pretty much everything that we do, apart from this. So I think it's a wake-up call, really, for all services to think about how, as a group of professionals, that we support parents after separation.
Social workers come up to place baby. That's usually late afternoon. It's often, there's been no consideration for what family time's going to look like, when it's going to be. Could there be an agreement that once a decision's been made through the courts, that we look at a 24-hour period to then plan for discharge? That allows the family to be together. It allows them that time to say goodbye. It allows the social worker to look at family time, what that's going to look like. And then we can have much more controlled, coordinated discharge where people have got a lot more information rather than it just being rushed because it needs to be done then and there.
When we as children's social care are separating families, sometimes there hasn't been the thought of where are parents going to, who's going to be there for parents when they go home, and actually hearing the stories from parents within this process and how harrowing their stories have been and the emotional trauma, and some of them it's been years, but that still feels to them like it was yesterday. And listening to that, we really do need to have a better system. We need a really deep dive and a self-reflection of what can we do better, and being really honest with ourselves, not just looking at what's gone well, because we all come into this role because we want to do better, we want to work better and help people to achieve the right outcomes and people be safe.
The system right now does not work. It's designed to support and help families and protect children, and I understand that, but the way that things and policies and procedures are right now, they do the total opposite.
We're talking about taking babies from the arms of parents. This shouldn't be done lightly. This shouldn't be done after you've only spoke to people for 3 hours and racing through this rat race of a system. It can't be like that. We're talking about real people.
In terms of I don't think I could go into a home where there's children being abused or whatever's going on in that home and then just go home and act like everything's okay and be mum to your own children. I think that's where the respect sort of comes from, is knowing that yes, it is a job and it doesn't affect your life in the way that it affects ours, but it still does have an effect. We're all kind of being broken down by a system that doesn't work.
I found the process absolutely amazing, really. And I've already begun to implement some of the things that I learned in that group in our processes and decision making. It can only get better.
The co-production process has helped quite a lot of us. The other women and stuff seem to be a lot more confident and vocal about what they're saying, and I think professionals are wanting to be more understanding of what parents are going through. If we can all come together and speak openly, then we can move forward together, can't we, rather than against each other.
Knowing there's going to be an end goal for this co-production is very, like, I want to say exhilarating almost. That's like a relief again, knowing it'll help others, hopefully change the system, and there are already changes.
And I think that's probably the biggest thing that I'll take away from it all, is I've learnt a hell of a lot about myself.
I keep trying to sort of take a step back and think to myself, right, things will change. You know, we've got this, you know, we're going to make a real difference.
Each and every one of us have taken something away from this that will help us to change our practice and hopefully change the experiences of children and families in Blackpool in the future.